Welcome. Today we're doing a video on an X-Men. Happens to be the 6-player unit, and how you rebuild the controls if you want to keep the original control sets. So these are all HAP controls here. I've rebuilt a few of them so far. One nice thing with this system is that you can lift this up like a car hood, and it's really easy to work under it. They even give you a little kickstand that can notch right into the wood there. So these three have been rebuilt so far. I wanted to keep the original joysticks. You can see some of the buttons had to be replaced on this one. Nightcrawler is particularly a popular joystick for people to use. You can put aftermarkets in, but if you're trying to keep things as original as possible, like I am, the color schema, you cannot just take these knobs and put them and port them to another currently available controller. So your option is rebuilding, and to look at what you need to rebuild, you're going to need new grommets. Hands are filthy right now from working on these things. They're so dirty. So these are available. They're about $8 a piece. Put a link in the description. So these are most certainly worn out. You can kind of see, if we go here, this is like I'm really having to push it. It's very stiff. It's very crisp, and it comes back to center. The more worn ones here, it's just sloppy. It's all over the place. Plus the dust covers are broken. So that's another thing too. These dust covers are also available. And I also purchased a new spring for the unit as well. And the springs, you can see here, they come with some C-clips in here as well that I purchased in case I needed them. I opted to use the original C-clips because they're a little larger, and I think they have a little more surface area to rub against the plastic. Good idea too to grab yourself some additional micro switches. You never know if some of them are bad. These are cheap, a couple bucks a piece. Always good to keep some on hand. All right. So let's get started. Okay, we're back. We're going to look at doing the Wolverine joystick first. See, Wolverine's right up there. It's the yellow knob. Really a good idea, though not required, is to take a picture of the head-on view of any of the ones you're about to do, because this bottom base can be in any number of the 4 positions. If you don't take a picture, it's a good chance you can reconnect it, and left's going to go right, or something's going to go the wrong way on it. If you do happen to not remember to take the picture, down here you have your wiring harnesses. So 1 and 2 are on board, 3, 4, 5, and 6, or 3 and 4 if you have a 4-player edition, are going to be on these off of these harnesses here. Looks like the one in the green, that's your 6. That's player 6. Then 5 is brown, 4 is yellow, and then 3 is this white with the dash colors. You can look up in the schematic diagram. It'll tell you which pins are which, and you can trace those to the adapters here. And then, look at the key adapters. Sometimes on mine the color had changed, so maybe there was a different group wiring one side from the other. So like on this player 6 here, the colors did change a little bit between the two. So just trace it back, and then whatever the color converts to, you can do that. So the first thing you're going to want to do here is you're going to want to undo this C-clip here. You can take a pair of needle nose pliers, or if you have a C-clip tool, you can use that as well, and just going to grab it and pull it off. And then very carefully, because as soon as that's unloaded, this white plastic is going to come down, and there's a little spring right behind that. Okay? There's 2 styles of these HAP joysticks that you're going to find if you start researching parts on them. This is the micro switch variety. So as you can see, there's micro switches around here. There's another variant that has leaf switches. The leaf switch uses a round plastic white cylinder in the center here, which is different than, of course, this rather square-shaped one that's angled and almost trapezoid on the sides there of it. Do not damage this, because you will be hoping to goodness you can find one on eBay or some boneyard, or maybe you have some spare parts of your own, because I have not been able to source any used plastic pieces here. This part is not available. It's unobtainium right now. And if anyone finds one and want to put it in the comments, please go ahead and do that. So without further ado, I'm going to pull off this C-clip and just bring this down. We'll be back in a second. Okay, we're back. I've taken off the C-clip, so I'm just going to slide off the plastic piece here. And then right behind that is the spring. Now I already unloaded it, so it didn't come popping down at me, but you can see there's a index mark here. That's where your C-clip is going to sit. At this point here, your joystick might be free to remove, but it also may not be if you have any corrosion on it. So mine does go up and down here. So it looks like this one's in pretty good shape. I've had some that were totally seized into that grommet that I showed earlier on in the video that you're going to have to get the rubber grommet assembly. If that's the case, you're going to have to use a puller. And what I ended up using, and I'll show you in a second, is a tool. This one happens to be a Craftsman, but this is a tool I had to use, and I used some PB Blaster around the grommet because there's a brass bushing inside of that grommet on the original version. The new one's a steel bushing. You'd unscrew the 4 screws between each of the micro switches. Okay, you can see there's a little screw set, and there's 4 of them. You'd unscrew those, this piece comes down, and then you would see the rubber piece on there. Soak it in PB Blaster. Try not to get any on the plastic housing above or on any dripping down into the cabin. Definitely put a rag down for yourself because I had a rag there from earlier from when I was working. Because this stuff here is, it's not good for plastic. PB Blaster is absolutely going to damage your plastics. So the next step is here, since this is reasonably loose, and regardless if it's reasonably loose or not, is to undo those 4 screws in between the micro switches, and I'm going to set this down. Again, take a picture for yourself. This one's got a white with an orange, I think it's orange or red or something, stripe on it. Is at 6 o'clock for this Wolverine stick, but take a picture. Yours may be different depending on when it was done in the factory. Okay, we're back again. I've undone those 4 screws, and I'm going to slowly lower this. Now there's going to be a washer underneath here. We don't want to lose it. And because we're on an angle, we're pretty good, which is nice again with this kick-up top. There's your bottom interface here. There's a little bit of grime in there. This one's not as bad. Some of them were just disgusting with gummy worms and God knows what else the kids were playing with. Save this washer. We're going to buff it up a little bit. We need to replace it. I don't think it's just a waste of time and money. It just takes a second. We're going to be on the buffer anyway. And now, if this is not seized, and this one is not, as you can see, the shaft is moving freely in here, we can go ahead and take out our joystick from the top. You have to give it a little twist because by the end there it can get caught. So joystick is out, and as you can see, this joystick is quite corroded. There are some sources for most of the colors on here if you wanted to buy new ones, but this is going to be a pretty quick job for us to wet sand and then buff, and we'll get it right back to darn close to new. And save yourself some money too, because you're going to have to buy the whole assembly if you're buying those colored ones. Just going to put this off to the side for now. Okay, so this piece up here, if you push your fingers down or push a screwdriver down through that hole, make sure you guys focus the hole here, this thing should come down a little bit. This one's going to be, of course, it's going to be a bear. So I'm just going to use my trusty screwdriver and push it out, and it has been released. That's garbage. We're not reusing it. That was certainly in the best shape of the ones that I've removed here so far. But look, I mean, you've got every disgusting, people's hair. This is what happens when people rip the dust covers off or if they've been damaged. Now, you can't see it too well on here, but you'll notice that there's a slightly higher profile on the grimy side than the bottom. That's important for when we align the new ones to put in. So if we put this side by side, let's not let it touch because it's disgusting. The new one here has the same kind of thing. The top is the more proud piece, okay? This is the bottom side that's going to go toward that washer that we're going to buff up, and then the plastic assembly goes against that. So that's the underside there, and that'll give us the feel we're looking for. All right, we're going to get over to the buffer now. Okay, so before we buff, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to do a little bit of wet sanding, all right? So I've got a piece of 800 grit wet. It can be used wet or dry, but wet is best in this case here because you don't want the rust in the air and stuff. Wet sandpaper. You're going to mount the stick in an old drill. It's got an old, RLB tool drill here. You're going to spin that on high with one hand while you make basically a hot dog around it with the other. And you're going to go up and down. Pay special attention to the groove right here, because that's where the rubber grommet assembly is going to sit up against. So we're going to want to make sure that that's clean and that this is going to be as clean as possible. The lower part here, the narrower part that's been milled down, that's where you're going to see all the assembly parts go to. This stuff up here, only the dust cover rides on this. So there's really nothing that's going to be a friction point or anything on here. This is more for looks. So we're going to get it, but the one thing to be careful of is try not to bump the ball. You can buff this ball a little bit later on. You get some guys who want to go and they can buff out the scratches and stuff, and I've got to be honest, there is a limit to the depth of the coating on this stuff. So be very careful when you start doing things like that, or you can end up right down to the black. It is not solid yellow. Whatever the colors are, it's not. At least for the X-Men, maybe there's other revisions on the HAPs that were, but I will tell you that I had one that was scratched reasonably deep from the get-go, and it is to the black through it. So buff them up a little bit. You know, the machine's going to have some patina. It's from 92. You know, so this is, you know, a 30-plus year old machine here. So it is what it is. But we will get this shaft shining brightly and beautiful before the end of this. So again, wet your sandpaper. You don't got to keep pouring water over any of that ridiculousness. Just get it wet. You're not going to be on here too long, and just get the rust off. Once the rust is off, we're going to wipe this down with a rag, and we're going to go to the next step. Okay, so that's been hit. Let's wipe this down. So don't worry if it's not perfect yet. We were just getting off the bulk of the rust with this first pass here. So clean this off here. I know we still got a bit going on up here. I'm not too worried about that. I think we can get more of that down when we get over to the buffing wheel. Okay, so now we're going to take... Okay, we're at the buffing wheel now. We're going to leave the knob in the drill at this point. So I've got a few different buffing compounds we're going to work with today. This is the more coarse one. This is your first pass. I dropped it and broke my stick, but it doesn't really matter. You're going to get your buffing wheel started spinning, and you're going to just, you know, kiss it with this a little bit. It'll slightly darken. Don't go crazy. You don't need a lot of this stuff. Once that's been applied, you're going to go and take your drill. I like to keep it spinning so it gets the surface area fairly evenly, and I'm spinning against the rotationist. I'm actually getting a much faster buff than you would get by just holding that loosely, because you're spinning against each other. You're getting it's double the RPM basically of one device if they're running in common speed. So let me get that going here, and we'll see how she goes. All right, so this is one pass so far. Still got a little going on by the top there, but I think that'll come out as we keep going down. So the next one we're going to go through is the brown. That's the medium buff polish. So I like to, between each of the buffs, while this is running, just take a terry cloth here. Never use a microfiber. And just, unless you have a buffer that has a double buffer wheel, you're able to keep multiple coarsenesses going at the same time. Just kind of go and hold the towel against it. And you see how much is coming off there? Some of that's the buff polish. Some of that is the junk you got off your, whatever you were buffing. So I like to take that and do that between them. And if you really are talking about efficiency, you're going to run through all of these joysticks simultaneously. But again, I'm suspecting a lot of people doing this are going to be home users, not people who are working in a shop where this is what they do all day. So do them one at a time. So if you get stuck, if you make a mistake about part order or something looks different on yours, you have another one to reference. All right, so that's pretty clean. You're not going to get it all off. All right, and then I'm going to go and take, again, second one here. I've got my red, and again, just kiss it. You'll see the wheel change color. You see how it's starting to change red? That's all you need. It's a little bit. Go crazy with it. All right, I'm going to buff up this next one because I need two hands for it, and we'll take a look and see how she's looking after that. Next coat's just finished up here. About to go to the fine one, which is the white. And between the coats, I like to clean that off a little bit. Always a terry towel for that. Never work with anything that's at high speed with a micro. It's a plastic cloth. It's not designed for that. Low speed buffing, sure. Anything off high speed like this? No way. Alright, let's get our next one on here. Alright, so our fine polish is on. I'm going to hit that with the fine, see how nice I can make it look, and then we'll go follow back up. And there we are. All done polishing with that. Now the part that was in the drill at the end, it's got a little bit of patina on it, trying to get this to focus. You can just go ahead, bring that around there. It's not going to need very much. No one's ever going to see it. This doesn't interact with any parts. You know, this is just where the C-clip goes and the plastic, which pretty much stays pretty static there. Tip there a little bit. And just, you know, rotate it around your hand. That's why we put it on the drill for the rest of it, so we don't have to go and do this junk with all the other ones. And that looks pretty darn good. And again, you want to buff the ball up later, you can do that. Pick a little plastic X or something and just hand polish that. Don't go, this is a plastic ball. It will melt. You don't want this hitting the thing here because it's going to make a mess. It's going to melt and you're going to be really sad about it. Next up is the carriage bolts. Now we've got the shaft all cleaned up and ready to go. First of all, this thing is disgusting here, so we're going to want to clean this. Real easy, 10mm socket or nut driver. Take these all off of here and the plastic will come right down. Now, one other thing I like to do, because they're just, you know, you're already cleaning this up, you're already spending the time. You can see the patina that these carriage bolts have gotten. So they're carriage bolts. Right below this rounded cap, there's a square head that indexes into the wood that allows it to not rotate, because obviously there's nothing you can put a purchase on up here with pliers without gnawing the heck out of this thing. And then it goes to a thread, which then goes to those nuts you saw down below. And you can see, look at how gross it is in there. It's disgusting. And it just happened. This thing was at a putt-putt or one of those like kids game places at some point. I'm sure it's never been taken apart since '92 when it was put together. And the dust caps are long since gone. So, but I shine these ones up here. Now look very carefully. You see, like it's almost like lighter plastic. You're really going to want to press down around it when you're getting the carriage bolts out, because you're going to tap up from the bottom with your fingers here. There's a good chance you're still going to bring up. You know, it still could get a little cloudy from the overlayer, maybe not adhering as well anymore to the printed image. But I opted to do this anyway. At some point, you know, down the road, you could always go and replace the top here. They do make decal kits for this with all this stuff. It's all available. I don't care enough about that at this point. It's still going to be used in a game room. You know, there's kids here and stuff. If you're on route, you certainly don't care about, well, if you're on route, you're probably putting any joystick in you can. This is probably more time than you want to spend. But anyway, yeah, so we're going to unscrew those 4 nuts underneath, and then we're going to put our fingers here and then gently just take the back of your, linesman pliers if you have them, or even just the back end of the nut driver, and just tap underneath until you just come proud. You're not looking to drive the whole thing back out, because you will end up with really bad hazing if you do that. Just tap it up so that you get the square part above the grain of the wood in the polymer coating here, and then you can just unscrew it, because it'll be fairly tight. Even though it's drilled out for the threads, it is kept fairly tight, because again, they wanted to have a reasonable tolerance on these things. So that's what I'm going to do now. Take the nuts out, pull down the plastic on the back, tap these up, and then gently unscrew all of them. And then we're going to take these over to the buffing wheel, and we're going to buff those right to a nice shine like you see here. Just to show you guys what I'm talking about, I just pulled off that piece we talked. I mean, look at that. It's disgusting. Definitely always pull those down and clean them, especially if the dust cover was missing. But regardless, just pull it down. Clean it. You're going to want to clean inside the hole there. Again, warm soapy water. You can work through some Clorox wipes. This is probably definitely going to have to go. I mean, these gummies got, you know, all the sticky little fingers that played this thing wherever it was living before. And here are our 4 bolts we're about to go buff. So let's get those over to the buffer and get underway. All right, buffer's going. We're just going to take these caps here, and we're just, whatever polish we had left on there from before is good enough. All you're trying to do is get the patina off, get that rust off if you have it. I mean, look, it's already looking like $1 million compared to what it did. I'm going to go a little more at it and get some of the other parts out. You know, walk it around, get the rim. If you have any rust on the shaft, this one doesn't, but just hit it with the thing there. It'll clean it right off for you. Makes it go in a lot smoother when you go to redress this thing. It's going to warm up, so just be careful with your fan, especially if you have, calloused or rough hands here. Be prepared that this will, heat's created when friction occurs. So down over here, get my next one. I mean, quick side by side here. I'm not going to make you guys sit here and watch me buff all these, but I mean, it's night and day. It's quite nice and clean. And we'll go through the other ones here, and then we'll go back to the next. All right, now time for reassembly. So first thing we're going to do, again, make sure you clean everything real thorough. I like a Clorox wipe. I think it's pretty versatile and real easy to kind of get in there. I like to go around some of the buttons too by the area. Just while you're in here, clean everything up. Don't make one thing look worse than the other. So just get around there. If you really want to, you can pull the buttons apart. You can mess around with all that stuff, but buttons are good for now, so I'm not doing that today on this video. All right, next thing we're going to do, we're going to get our carriage bolts, and we're going to put those back in. So we got a nice buffed up carriage bolts. So watch when you're putting these in. You can see there's a squareness to some of these. The holes have a squareness to them, okay? When you're putting this in, you see the square on the top there? Get it in the hole. Get it in the darn hole. Don't worry about pushing them in this direction because you're not going to strip anything, so that's okay. And then just wiggle it till you feel it, and you should be able to push it in with your finger. Do that with all 4 of them. And then we're going to put the plastic piece on the back. Okay, got the piece back in. All of the nuts are relatively flush. They'll pull in a little more once we tighten up the nut. I'm sorry, all the bolts are, carriage bolts are relatively flush. They'll tighten in once we do the nuts. Now we're going to load up our 10 mil. A little to the left, you hear the click, and then bring it to the right and screw them all in. Once you get them all in, you can go around, tighten them down. Don't go to the moon. It's this is particle board here, and you can definitely cause more issues on top of the board if you tighter you make it. Snug and tight, so it's not going to get loose. But remember, these also have a built-in lock washer on the back, so they really aren't going anywhere. All right. Before we go any more through the assembly, we're going to take a moment and talk about lubrication. You have 2 options for lubrication. A dry, plastic-safe lubrication, or nothing. That's it. Do not put any other kind. Don't use keep WD-40 away from anything that's anything to do with arcade games or pinball tables or any of that stuff. If you have to lubricate something, dry lube. You don't want dry lube, you don't want to go out and buy something. This is PB Blaster dry lube. This is specifically plastic safe. Safe or use on plastics. Must be safe on plastics. It's a light blue. You can get it over at Lowe's, Home Depot, any of your box stores. There's the SKU number if someone used to look it up. Part 16-TDL. I'm sure there's some other dry lube manufacturers out there. This is the one that's readily available to most consumers. And all we're going to do is spray some on the lower shaft. Remember, this is all decoration. This is just a means to get the controls up in the player's hand. The index spot down, that's it. I don't care what anyone else tells you. If the only thing you take away from this video today is that you don't use anything but dry lube or no lube, then make that be that as it may. You got way too many people who think they're experts on YouTube here with a lot of advice that is going to cause a lot of problems, because any other kind of silicone or WD-40, any other kind of lubricant is a spot for dust and grime to collect. And it'll grind out the bushing, it'll get the controller jammed up, not to mention that this rubber, you have to be very careful what goes and leaks onto this. This can be affected by chemicals. WD-40 is very corrosive on some materials. It's great on metals, it's great on rust. It's not good on plastics, for sure, it'll melt your plastic. Remember, the top of this is plastic, and it is not good on rubber either. So we don't want to be anywhere near that. In a couple seconds, it turns into a white, almost like a very fine baby powder almost, it looks like on there. That's lubricated. It's ready to go. You don't have to lubricate anything else in this assembly. The only other thing I do put a little squirt of is right down the hole here, because there is some movement in play from the spring assembly on that, just to deter some of the wearing. But technically, this is a bushing. Plastic on metal is a bushing. The only reason I do that, as I kind of mentioned before, this part is unobtainium right now. You cannot buy this. So unless you want to go with another joystick and make your game not original, you're going to have to make sure that you try to preserve this part as long as possible. Be careful when you're taking it out. Clean in here. Get your your Clorox wipe or whatever, your rag or whatever you're cleaning in here. Again, Gentle soap, nothing crazy, nothing harsher than Dawn dish detergent, and clean that. You don't got to go crazy with it. No one's ever going to see it. It's just a functional piece that engages with the micro switches. It's just the buffer for that. Time to put the joystick back in the hole. We just put the joystick in here, right? No. Dust cover. Dust cover first. Rough side, you can choose the textured side and the smooth side. Unless you want the artwork to look real bad real quick, smooth side down, textured side up, before you put the joystick in, or you're going to be tearing the whole thing apart again and redoing it. Okay, we're on the underside again. Joystick is in. It has a nice little bushing. It's just sitting there. Now it's time to put in our new replacement grommet. And again, I'll put a link in the video to where you can get these. The taller side goes toward the top, up. So make sure, other than that, it's any direction you want. You're going to slide this over the shaft. Remember, we already lubricated the shaft. Oh, don't listen to me. I'm dropping parts today. We're going to slide this over the shaft here. Come on. Slide it over the shaft, and then inside of here, it's going to be pretty tight, okay? Make sure you wedge it. You see there's no gap on the top here. Go around all four sides and make sure that that's nice and tight up there, okay? Great. Next thing that's going to go on, and I didn't show this on camera when I did it, but I did buff up this a little bit. This is the washer. This washer is the next piece right before we put the main assembly on. There's two sides to a washer, okay? So you've got, let's make sure you guys can see this, sorry. You've got a shiny side here, you can run your fingers over, it's completely smooth, and you got another side where the lip is you can gently feel the lip on the outside. Shiny side up on this, okay? Just again, the object here, these are old controls. What is the least amount of wear I can continue to have to enjoy these for another 20 years, potentially, especially in a home environment? That's what you're doing. Shiny side up. And then after that's on, we're going to go and put our part up here, and each of those little round nubs, you see on the top, there's 4 round nubs. They fit into each of these little corner encasements here, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and do that, get that up there, and then we'll put the 4 screws in that hold that piece in place. Make sure you orient this the way it came out, or you're going to find out real quick when you turn it on that the player's not moving in the direction you thought. There's not a lot of extra wire in play here, so it's pretty easy not to mix it up, I guess, if you're careful. But I know for a fact we had the dash wire on the front toward us. I have a picture to back that up. And if you didn't, follow my instructions about looking at the schematic, and you'll be able to figure out where it went to. And remember that if it says the button is for going left, if I'm looking at this thing here and it says, oh, the button that goes left, well, it's actually the one on the right side, because when the joystick, when you go left, the bottom of the joystick, the right side is what's actually going right. Is they're going left, so joystick shaft, you push to the left from the top here, the button to the right is the one that's actually engaged to make the movement happen left. So hopefully it's not too confusing for anybody. Just finishing up the last of the screws here, so we have our piece oriented, the washer's underneath, and I slid this over. Remember, whenever you're doing this stuff, turn it left, just to hear a little drop in, okay? Then go to the right. So I make sure, because nothing here should be overly hard for you to turn. If there's any heavy resistance, you're doing something wrong. This stuff here, when you tighten them up for their final tightness, do opposites of each other. Try to do that a little bit, just so you can evenly get a little, and you're just getting it snug. You're not tightening it to the moon. It's plastic. Everything we're working on is plastic. It will either strip or crack, and then you're going to be real sad, because you're buying a new joystick if you can find it. Okay, so all that's on now, and all that's left to do, you can see we're moving around nice and clean, real crisp now, return, is to put our spring on. So we got a new spring, and these are, you don't have to replace the springs, but I think they were all at 93 cents. You're going to be in $8 a piece. You're doing one of these, you're $50 in just for rubbers. What's an extra $6 at that point? It's bricks in the Grand Canyon. You're going to slide your spring on here. You're going to slide the white plastic square. Get that so we can show you. Got our spring on here. We've got our white plastic square. Doesn't matter which way it goes, as long as it's, you know, remember where it's going to be going. The whole point of this is it's going to be rocking and clicking. You hear the clicking noise of those switches? That's what engages the switches, okay? And that's all that happens there. And then we're going to put our C-clip. You see that little tiny indent there? That's where the C-clip rides. It just fits for the C-clip to fit in there. Snap our C-clip in. Try to do shiny side up against it. The shiny side is against the plastic. It's last wear on the plastic. That's the name of the game here. Pop your C-clip on, and then we should be done. Okay, C-clip is on. Nice and clear in there. This thing is good to go. If you're having a hard time getting the C-clip on, have somebody push down a little bit on the knob up top for you and hold it steady from wobbling while you're working on the bottom. You can take a little pair of needle nose pliers and just get the apex, or the top center part of the horseshoe with one end of it and the other piece against the opposite side of the shaft edge there. You should be able to pinch it in pretty easily. Do that with, you know, hold the C-clip like that with one, get everything positioned, and use the other hand with the pliers. You should be able to get it in. You should be able to do it yourself, but if you can, again, get a second set of hands. Don't be a hero. Let's see if every time we do one of these, I like to test it. So I'll lift this up here, lower this down. And again, I said to you guys earlier, if you want to buff this out, get a little plastic X, something like that, on a cloth, and just spend the time buffing the spots. Don't worry about anything underneath. No one's going to see underneath, you know. So let's power this baby up. Okay. I guess I'll leave this out for now because we're still working on it. Okay, ramp checks out, all that good stuff. Yes, I know my pictures on my monitors are off. I have some adjusting to do. I just rebuilt them recently. New high voltage flyback, and I have not reconverged them since that happened. So, all right. So let's go. Let's give ourselves the credit here. So we need a new bulb. Bad film in that bulb. Okay, Wolverine's got a credit.
In the 21st century, people knew led by magic.
All right, let's go. So left is moving left, right's moving right. I'm getting killed here. A little mutant power. Down, up. And you can go diagonal, of course, because you can run this thing 8 ways when it grabs 2 at the same time. So, all right, success. So that's all there is to that. Again, I wanted to just really quick, if you end up getting them stuck, you have 2 options. You pull off everything underneath. You unscrew the assembly down to when you get to that rubber bushing that has the brass ring on it. Again, it's a brass with rubber bushing. I got a bunch in the junk box over here so we can look real quick. A lot of junk in here. So this is one right here, right? This gets stuck on there. You see it's got rubber on top, but it's got a lip. And you can see this one's all chewed up on me here. I'm trying to get the focus to work, how chewed up that is. What I ended up doing was I put my my puller around on that. I centered this on the bottom center of the joystick stalk, okay? Make sure you're centered. You don't want that to walk. It'll mushroom your joystick, and you ain't using that joystick without getting the actual grinder out to take down that mushroom piece. And then sprayed the top of it with PB Blaster, protecting the cabinet, protecting all controls around it. Remember, PB Blaster is bad on plastic and certainly not something you want soaking in the particle board. And then I put a little tension on it. If I couldn't get it to go after with a little tension, give a little more PB Blaster, put a little more tension, let it sit overnight, come back the next day, tighten down your thing with your wrench, and this thing will, one way or the other, she's coming off. Now the other option, if you don't want to wait all that long, still soaking with PB Blaster, is cut all the rubber off here and down to the brass bushing. Take a Dremel tool with a cut-off wheel and just make a slit down one side of the brass bushing. You can get a larger flathead screwdriver in there, something maybe with a square shaft, and you should be able to put your wrench on that square shaft and turn and split it. And that should get it, as long as you get it wide, the thing will come down. This is garbage anyway. All these are garbage. They absolutely have to be replaced, especially if they're original. The rubber is long since shot. And just something, if you don't have one of these, nice pullers here, I don't know what part this is here. It's a 5.5-inch puller is what I used on it here. But if you don't have something like this, just get yourself the Dremel tool out with a cutoff wheel, and you will get it out. Yeah. So hopefully this helps everybody. If anyone has any questions, one other thing I just wanted to mention real quick. If anyone's having the sound module problem with their X-Men, I replaced my board with a one that was made from a company that's out of, where's the name of it here? They're out of Australia. And they use a different type of capacitor. So these are the capacitors they're using here, and I forgot the term offhand here. But these will never leak, the ones that are on this little sub daughter board here, okay, right above my finger. All the components, they also relocate to the top. Yeah, this is a really great for the 054 it's a really great module. Even if you're in the States, order it in from Australia. There's a couple other companies making them. They relocate all components to the top of the board. They use a better capacitor. If you ever need to service it, there's no more taking this thing out again. You do need to save the 2 chips, your ASIC and your, the other chip, I can't remember the other one. They are, one of them is, I think you can buy the ASIC, but you can't buy one of them you can buy, one you can't. Again, this is kind of impromptu to mention this in the video here. If you do not have a hot air soldering station, do not attempt to move these chips over. Don't attempt any of this work on this board. These boards are very expensive to replace, especially the 6-player if you could find it. They're darn near impossible unless you want to move to emulation, and a lot of the value of the cabinet goes away when you do that. So if you're going to be keeping this thing original, you want it to be pristine. Your audio is having that issue. As soon as you notice, even if you haven't noticed it yet, I would recommend people get this, because the capacitors that were on the back side of the original board in here are 30 years old, and historically every one of them has had some kind of leak. If they leak and they affect these 2 chips, one of them again you can get, but the other proprietary Konami chip on the bottom here, you're done. You have this chip here get corroded or damaged, good luck finding a boneyard board today in 2024. They're darn near impossible to come across, and if you can find one that doesn't have the same problem, that's even rarer. But you could be $600-700 in for an untested board at this point. They're very hard to come by, and your only other option then is emulation. And again, if you're going emulation, why bother with this thing here? Why would you have a cabinet sitting here with 2 tubes in it that's taken up? Look at the depth this thing takes up, because you got one TV shooting straight on, one shooting up from underneath. You got a one-way mirror in here. I mean, if you're trying to keep something original, that's great. If not, you could do all emulation with this and a flat screen TV, with a console like this and a flat screen, and put a ton of different games on something. But yeah, if you're trying to keep original, you're going to want to make sure you take care of that if you haven't already, as soon as humanly possible. All right, everyone, good luck and happy repairs.